Hey guys, Brent Ehrler here with another tackle warehouse recap. Just got done with Toledo Bend for the Bass Elites, and fishing was interesting. You know, this year's been kind of a strange year across the country. They really never had a winter and it never got cold. So the fish have had this trickle spawn, meaning that they kind of spawned and they never had that real cold snap and then got warm to really have that major push to go up and spawn. So the fishing was just a little bit tricky this year. I really figured that we were just going to jack them up here and it was going to be a full-blown sight fish deal. It really wasn't. It was a little bit of everything. There was a shad spawn going on, guys sight fished, guys fished deep, and it was just tricky. So what I found is I had a couple areas where I was catching them a little bit deeper. And what I did is I started off in the morning on day 1 and 2 fishing deep, but I say deep, I wasn't fishing that deep. I was fishing about 10 feet of water, fishing points, fishing secondary points in drains. And what I found is these fish were kind of post-spawn and staging out there. They weren't all the way out on the main lake. They were kind of in the creeks. And the best ways for me to catch them were on a 3/4 ounce jig and a 3/4 ounce wobble head with a Yamamoto hula grub. So for my jig setup, what I did is just ran a 3/4 ounce jig and put a 5-inch Yamamoto twin tail on there. And I always throw a jig on a frog rod, and so this right here is the brand new Daiwa Elite. And what I did is I took that Elite rod, I put the brand new Daiwa SV reel in an 8.1 gear ratio, and that's what I always throw this kind of setup with. But I went with a little bit heavier line. I was fishing around stumps. I went with 18-pound Sunline shooter. I started using that this year and I've really enjoyed it. So the 18-pound is just a good all-around line. It's not too heavy, so you can fish a little bit deeper. It's not too light, so when you get around the stumps. But 7.4 frog rod, Daiwa SV reel. It was scary how far you could cast this thing. Now this reel is supposed to be better at casting light baits, but it also is very versatile to where you can cast a 3/4 ounce jig. And I'm actually going to blame Daiwa for one thing. I lost a fish in the tournament because I casted it so far out there. One bit it on the sink. When I set the hook, I had too much slack in my line. The fish came up and jumped. So a far cast is actually a very good thing, but great all-around reel, perfect for throwing that. Okay, so the other rod that I threw fishing deep was a Yamamoto hula grub, and I put that on a swing head. That's a Boss swing head. And what I did with this is I fished it almost like a crankbait, so I could cover more water. When I got to specific spots, I threw the 3/4 ounce Boss jig. When I wanted to cover water to get to the certain specific little spots, I threw the swing head. And I threw it on the same rod, the Ishman frog rod, Daiwa Elite Series. This time I put it on the Steez A reel, and it's a 7:1 gear ratio. I actually went with this reel because I ran out of my 8.1s. I had other stuff tied on that I thought I was going to do more, and I put it on this for no specific reason other than my Daiwa SVs were put on other rods. It's a very smooth reel, can make a good far cast. I like the faster gear ratio when doing a swivel head like this for the biggest reason. I'm winding it really slow. You don't want a high gear ratio reel for a swivel head, but what I like is that when a fish bites, I can bring in more line as I set the hook and get a better hook set on the fish. A lot of times these fish were biting where I'd wind it along and it would just go slack on me. I wouldn't even feel a bite. Just be creeping that thing along and your line would just go limp on the water. So you have to catch up really fast and swing to get them. So the more line you can bring in, your odds are better of hooking that fish. So Steez A 7.1 is what I use for that one. Now, that's how I caught the bulk of my fish on day 1 and day 2. In fact, all of them I caught on that. Day 3 was a different story. I wasn't able to actually get on my best spot. Another competitor ended up catching there in the afternoon, and on one of the days after I'd already left, and started there on day 3, so I couldn't actually get on my best spot. So I kind of went into scramble mode. I fished around, I caught a few fish, I had a real small limit, and I tried to kind of get out where I was, but nothing was right. There was locals fishing as well, and I had to kind of scrap what I was doing. Now, I didn't completely do something new. I had been throwing a Lucky Craft jerkbait, but not in this area. I was 20 miles away from where I was actually throwing the jerkbait, so I had it on the deck, and I go, man, I'm gonna just kind of fish around here and see what I can find. And there was a good little secondary point, real shallow, that I could see. And I went over there, and I'm not joking, on my 5th cast I catch a 2 3/4. What I was throwing is the Lucky Craft Slender Pointer 127. Now this is not the 127. This is actually the 112, but I'll get to that in a second. One thing that I really like about the Slender Pointer, has a very erratic action, but it has the 3 trebles on it. Now normally in a kind of around the spawn, a jerkbait's a great search tool. It shows you the fish, but they don't really bite it. Having the 3 trebles helps for when those fish come up and just barely swipe at it of actually landing them. So I threw the Slender 127, and I caught one right off the bat. As soon as I threw it, and I culled out one that was barely a keeper. I gained probably 1.5 pounds with the first cull. Well, long story short, by the end of the day, I'd culled everything out that I had, all on the jerkbait. And I was telling my marshal that, man, you could get your heart broken fishing where I'm at, because there's a lot of stumps. And they're tall stumps. They're 4 foot, tall stumps. I'm only fishing in 4 feet of water, and they're just under the surface. You couldn't really see them when you cast. Well, I hook a good one, a 3.5 pounder, and my line is here, but the fish is jumping 20 feet over here. Well, my line was around a stump. He jumped about 3 or 4 times and then wrapped around the stump and broke me off. It was my only Lucky Craft 127. So I had to switch to the 112. I culled one more time with the 112, but the 127 was a little bit better bait, a little bit bigger profile. I think the fish, swam farther to actually get it, because they were able to hear it and see it and come and really hone in on it. So the 127, I threw that on Daiwa Elite Series. This is actually one of my rods. It's a finesse rod. It's a 7-foot medium heavy rod. I put on 12-pound Sunline FC Sniper and went with the Daiwa SV reel, 6.3 gear ratio. This reel is awesome for casting the big 3/4 ounce jig. It's also awesome for casting a jerkbait. Now the 127 and the 112 is not a real light jerkbait, but I could throw a Pointer 78 and cast it just as far as I can these, because of that SV spool. It allows me to cast smaller baits farther. So it was windy. A lot of times I was casting into the wind. The SV spool helped making those casts into the wind, having fewer backlashes, paired with the T-wing system. It all really helped making those casts. So I changed the split or the treble hooks out to a Gami round bend. On the Slender 127, I was using 4s. I was using pretty big trebles. I just wanted that. I wanted to hook those fish and get them in the boat. I knew I was around some nasty cover, and I figured a better hook was better. So that's what I used this week. Decent tournament. Ended up in 17th place. Had my opportunities at that top 12, but I'll take it. Points, check, everything gets me rolling for the year. I have no complaints, and it was fun fishing. Caught a lot of fish, had a great time, and that's it. All the stuff is available right here on tacklewarehouse.com.